And I'd like to call the meeting to order and turn the meeting over to our moderator.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome. This is the representative town meeting of the town of Darien. We are subject to Robert's Rules of Order. I see a group of people that may not have been to many of these, and so I will remind them that decorum and debate is part of Robert's Rules of Order. And I urge folks who might want to make comments here tonight to keep them precise, keep them to the point, and that's the way to be most effective in this body. I'll accept the agenda tonight without objection and have a motion to approve the minutes of May 13, please. So moved. A second, please. Second. Corrections, additions. Okay, I see none. All in favor of accepting the minutes as distributed? Opposed? If you have any abstentions, you can leave them with our secretary. We'll start with item, I have no announcements. We'll start with item 1913, consideration and action on closing out the Superstorm Sandy Revenue Fund. Jack Davis, Chair of F&B.
I am Jack Davis, District 3, Chairman of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. I move RTM Resolution 19-13, consideration and action on the closing out of the Superstorm Sandy Revenue Fund and restoring final balance to the Town of Darien General Fund. Is there a second? Second. If there's no objections, I propose to waive the reading of the resolution. The RTM F&B Committee established a working group in conjunction with Jen Chinesky, Town Director of Finance, reviewing 22 fund accounts. The work required the review of past board and commission minutes and resolutions, old documents, discussions with town staff, accounting entries, research of old newspaper articles, and other work deemed necessary. Of the 22 accounts reviewed, 3 are active operating, 9 special purpose, and 10 gift and donation funds. The F&B Group and Director of Finance presented our findings to the Board of Finance and recommended actions for their consideration. Several of the funds reviewed, mostly gift, were reactivated and used for its original intent as part of the 2020 fiscal year budget. Special thanks to Cheryl Russell, our RTM member, and Park and Rec Commissioner Susan Daly for assistance on 3 park-related funds. One account was closed by the Board of Finance as they were the only board required to take action on that fund. 4 accounts are required additional approvals based upon how they were initially created. With respect to this resolution, Superstorm Sandy Fund was established with a transfer from the General Fund with approvals from the Board of Finance and the RTM. It was established to account for all costs incurred by the town associated with the storm's namesake, as well as a repository for all reimbursements for insurance grants and FEMA amounts. All activity is completed and all reimbursements have been received. The closing of this fund will move $215,747 to the general fund and be categorized as unassigned fund balance, which is the most favorable balance for the credit agencies. The F&B Group members were Bert Van Stubenagel, Mike Heitz, David Martin, Tammy Sloat, and myself, and special thanks to Jen Chinesky for her work on this project as well. F&B approved this transfer at its May 14th meeting and recommends the same. We did it unanimously and recommends the same to the full RTM. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Any other committees? Town officials? Members of the RTM? Electors of the town? Ready to vote? Those in favor, please rise. Opposed? And abstentions. Next item on the agenda is 19-14, consideration and action on closing out the Animal Control Fund, Waste Disposal Fund, Waste Management Fund. Again, Chair of F&B, Jack Davis.
I am Jack Davis, District 3, Chairman of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. I move RTM Resolution 1914, consideration and action on the closing of the Animal Control Fund, the Waste Disposal Fund, and the Waste Management Fund, and restoring remaining balances to the Town of Darien General Fund. Do we have a second? Second. If there's no objections, I propose to waive the reading of the resolution. As I said, this was part of the overall project. The Animal Control, Waste Disposal, and Waste Management funds have been inactive for years. The fund's original purpose has changed, and currently any related activity, revenues, or expenses are now part of the Board of Selectmen operating budget. Closing these funds will move $194,552 from general fund assigned to unassigned fund balance. The closure for these three funds required Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and now RTM approval. The Board of Selectmen approved at their May 6th meeting, the Board of Finance approved at their May 14th meeting, and the RTM Finance and Budget Committee met in April 8th and unanimously approved this resolution and recommend the same to the full RTM.
Okay. Other committees? Town officials? Members of the RTM? Electors of the town? Ready to vote? Those in favor, please rise. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is 19.9, consideration and action on appropriation of $609,000 for the Highland Farm Improvements Project and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the amount of $609,000 to meet the appropriation. There may be a number of people who wish to speak on this. Those who wish to speak who are not members of the RTM, I'll give you 3 minutes per person to make your case. This has been out on the table for a while, so you should be able to make fairly concise comments about anything that you had to say. So for the Finance and Budget Committee, Jack Davis.
I am Jack Davis, District 3, Chairman of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. I move RTM Resolution 19-9, consideration and action on the appropriation of $609,000 for the Highland Farms Improvement Project and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the amount of $609,000 to meet said appropriation. Is there a second? Second. If there's no objections, I propose to waive the reading of the resolution. The RTM Finance and Budget Committee met on April 29th with 10 of 15 members, constituting a quorum. I'm going to deal predominantly with the cost because there's two other committees that will deal with the detail. And initially, the improvements were to be completed over a 2-year period. The Board of Selectmen decided during their budget deliberations to move all work to fiscal year 20, saving money. Estimates for the work had significant detail, was prepared in the fall of 2018, and was discussed with the Board of Selectmen, and F&B also reviewed the work estimate. The town will save funds on the original estimate by having the Public Works or Park and Rec employees do some of the work, and by consolidating the remaining work into a single year. The work will include a walking path, 2 parking lots, for a total of 92 spaces, a shed for equipment, and other minor improvements consisting mostly of shading. Future costs for this bond is based upon the following. Issuance in February of 2020, a 20-year bond, level principal, interest rate at 3.17% or 50 basis points higher than the March 2019 issue, first coupon payment in 6 months, and first principal payment in 12 months. Under the above factors, the estimated cost for bonding would approximate $43,000 per year, or about half of 1 basis point annually, using the current adjusted grand list over the life of the bond. The F&B committee met, and with 10 of 15 members present, voted unanimously to approve this resolution and recommend the same to the full RTM. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. For the Park and Recreation Committee, Adele Conniff, the chair.
Good evening. Adele Conniff, District 3, RTM Parks and Recreation Committee Chairperson. On May 13, 2019, the RTM Parks and Recreation Committee met and voted to support the Parks and Recreation portion of the Town of Darien budget, including a $50,000 special appropriation for short lane improvements. The committee decided to table their vote on 19-9, the Highland Farm Improvement Project appropriation of $609,000, due to the numerous questions they had. At the RTM meeting that same evening, the vote on 19-9 was postponed until this evening. The RTM Parks and Recreation Committee met on May 28th with 10 of 15 members present, constituting a quorum to discuss and vote on 19-9. Just as a reminder, a little history. Planning and Zoning in January 2017 approved the subdivision application from the Ox Ridge Hunt and Racquet Club to divide its property into 2 parcels and sell to the Town of Darien 16.296 acres. The town purchased Highland Farm for $6,250,000. At that time, as part of the purchase agreement, the open space deed restriction tax settlement agreement of the town with the club that had put in place a 30-year open space deed restriction and a 40-year right of first refusal if any portion of the property was sold on the property was modified. Permitted use included the following as negotiated as part of the purchase of the property: all current uses, passive recreation including but not limited to picnicking, walking trails, and hiking, natural grass athletic fields, irrigation, septic, sewer, and drainage systems, grading and filling reasonably necessary, parking as required by special permit use, temporary removable seating, one building limited to 1 story and 1,000 square feet for use as public restrooms, storage, and a possible concession stand. Other uses agreeable to the town and Ox Ridge Riding and Racquet Club. The Ox Ridge Riding and Racquet Club may use the transferred property for 1 week each June for the annual Ox Ridge Charity Horse Show, and at other times upon mutual agreement that do not interfere with the town use. In the town's site plan application to Planning and Zoning, the town proposed to refurbish and expand 2 existing parking areas, conduct a pedestrian stone chip walking, jogging pathway, and locate a single-story shed and a portable bathroom there, including construction of a stormwater management system, minor regrading of the property, and installation of ancillary signage and fencing, and to perform related site development activities. Proposal to utilize the property for programmed, active, and passive recreational uses and activities, as well as special events with restrictions on use. P&Z made their ruling with stipulations on July 2018, which were amended on January 29, 2019. As part of P&Z's process, in-depth studies were done on traffic, parking lot construction, the walking path, possible placement of the shed, which is 20 by 12, and the portable bathroom, and screening, both natural and fencing. This information provides the basis of this appropriation request. There were many Park and Rec Committee questions after our last meeting, after that meeting where you guys then postponed until this week, concerning the parking areas in the improvements plan. The committee had been concerned about the number of spaces, the material used to pave the parking area, the use of Belgian block, and the cost associated. At our meeting on May 28th, John Cini, chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission, spoke to this topic to address concerns. P&Z hired a consultant to assess how much parking was needed for the uses stipulated. A peer review was conducted, and the P&Z Commission was satisfied with the conclusions. Recommendations that scheduled activities not overlap and the decision to have 2 parking areas were to aid in traffic flow, keeping the parking needs from being larger. The recommendation was that porous asphalt be used for the driveway and handicapped parking, including parking for a van, and that it be edged with Belgian block to protect the asphalt. Belgian block is durable and cost-efficient in the long term. Porous asphalt has been used elsewhere in town successfully. Gravel alone compacts over time, losing its porous nature, thus it was not deemed as good as a surface as the porous asphalt. The parking lot will have grass pavers instead of asphalt. Fencing around the parking area will be in keeping with the rest of the property so that it will look like one continuous field. In general, the tasteful parking and fencing will be in keeping with the neighborhood. There is room between the stone wall at the edge of the property and the parking areas for natural screening. The plantings will be chosen with the neighbors' wishes in mind. Screening will be provided around the comfort station and shed. Currently planned is a 20 by 12-foot shed, which will house a large sit-down mower and a push mower. This type of storage will provide the flexibility of being relocated to another area of the property should the needs arise. A portable comfort station is planned to be located near the shed, will be screened, and could be moved as well. Any permanent type of comfort station will require a septic system and be more costly. That's not to say that it will be moved. It says that it could be moved. The Darien Parks and Recreation Master Plan recommends expanding walking pathways and trail connectivity to and within parks. The stone and chip walking trail included in the improvements plan will be fully ADA compliant for use by wheelchairs and strollers. Jamie Stevens and Darien First Selectman walked the committee through the various uses for the field. The property will be used for yoga, walking, parks and recreation programming, and town events, as well as for youth soccer. There'll be no varsity athletics played on the field. The field will not be leveled. Some of the excavated soil from the parking construction will be used to fill in some of the depressions in the field. Redness and Mead provided a cost estimate to the Planning and Zoning Commission for the Highland Farm improvements of over $700,000. This includes, but is not limited to, regrading in the parking area, fill, topsoil, porous asphalt, Belgian block, fencing around the lot, wheel stops, signage, landscaping, and the walking path. Note, all construction will be put out to bid. That's just an estimate. Kate Bush, Darien Town Administrator, told our committee that the town believes they could reduce the total cost to $600,000 The bonding costs bring the request to $609,000. The RTM Parks and Recreation Committee approved Resolution 19-9 with 8 in favor, 1 opposed, with 1 abstention. We hope that the full RTM will support this improvement project. And we look forward to all of us enjoying the beautiful Highland Farm.
For Planning, Zoning, and Housing, the Chair, Joanne Hennessy.
Joanne Hennessy, Chair, Planning, Zoning, and Housing. Adele, thank you. That was very thorough on the history, so I'm going to, in the interest of time, not repeat what she so eloquently said. The Planning, Zoning, and Housing Committee met on Monday, June 10th, with 13 of 14 members present, comprising a quorum. We discussed the various aspects of the proposed appropriation, which is for minimal infrastructure improvements to Highland Farms, to include the parking access for the community, a walking trail, and a shed to house maintenance equipment. This request is consistent with the intent of the purchase of the property, which occurred over 2 years ago, and for the desire of the community to have more accessible open space. I wanted to address, we've all heard a lot of questions and concerns over the past couple of weeks, and I wanted to address some of those. Building committee, why aren't we having a building committee? Well, first of all, building committee implies building. And that doesn't apply to land purchases because there's nothing being built. It's a land purchase, so that part of the price isn't included. The Board of Selectmen, and Jamie, you can correct me if I don't get this right, put through, because we've had trouble with things like the Mather Center, it was decided to have building committees for major capital projects in the town to help avoid some of the problems that we've had in the past. They said, well, anything over $1 million. Doesn't mean you must have a building committee for anything over $1 million, but if it's something being built over $1 million, that they should at least look at it. The things that this is, a building committee is appropriate for are things like the cafeteria expansion at the high school, the public works garage, it worked beautifully, Oxford School, a $60 million project. These are things that a building committee is required. It's not a policy committee. It's to help to make the building go smoothly. For what we're discussing tonight, it's a parking lot and a walking trail. These aren't things rising out of the ground. So that is why and it also doesn't rise to the level of expenditures. But there's nothing coming out of the ground here. There's no building committee required. You all received, among the many emails, the link to all the various public hearings that have been held over the past 2+ years. Everyone who has wanted to have a chance to speak or provide input to the various boards and committees has had that opportunity, and they have been heard. Maybe all the requests haven't been agreed with or approved, but everybody who has wanted to speak has definitely had the opportunity to speak with the Board of Selectmen, the Planning and Zoning Commission. They've had plenty of time for input. This limited infrastructure project that we're voting on tonight is in keeping with the desire of the town for open space. This is open space. You have to have parking to make it accessible. We made that clear in the presentation in February of 2017 before we purchased the property. Everybody in the RTM, all the neighbors, everybody knew what the amended Exhibit C was to the purchase agreement, which outlined all the potential uses, but the most important thing was parking, because if you don't have parking, nobody can get there unless you live right there. And we made promises to the taxpayers of this town that this land was going to be accessible to all. It was paid for by all, and it needs to be accessible to all. And the only way it can be accessible to all is if you have parking. So this is a very limited request. In the Exhibit C, there was an approval for a potential comfort station. There are no plans right now for a comfort station. We may not need one. The Parks and Recs is going to look at, over time, how the activities work, and the seasonal porta potty may be all that we need. If, in fact, down the road, 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years from now, the people feel they want a comfort station, that will be the time to debate it. But not now, because it's not on the table. There are no plans to build it. Why don't we have a complete plan? Well, this is the complete plan for this land right now, that there's a walking trail and parking, and that there will be some limited use, probably little kids by Park and Rec. They will determine what the programs are. There may be senior Tai Chi there. There may be yoga there. There probably will be, hopefully, some revenue-generating town events that would be great for the town. You know, they were going to do a big opening Halloween party. These are fun things for the town that the town wants, and the town wants to use this land. Future uses, that's going to be up to future people. The other thing that was brought up is, why is this land not a designated parkland as opposed to being under town control? This was something that we debated quite a bit during the purchase of the property. And the reason being planning, we are the planning committee, is the open space declaration expires in 2042. Now, I'm guessing I won't be here in 2042, and I'm guessing that most of the people in this room will not be here. What is the town going to look like in 2042? What do the taxpayers who are going to be living in this town at that time want? We don't know. We felt it very important not to tie the hands of future generations by decisions we made with the purchase of this property. So by keeping it under town control, they can decide to do whatever they want. Hopefully by it being, we'll see that it was brought up by being open parkland and people getting used to going there and using it and seeing how beautiful it is, that they're never going to want it to be anything else. So hopefully we've answered the questions that were asked. And the Planning, Zoning, and Housing Committee, with 13 of 14 members present, comprising a quorum, voted 12 in favor, none opposed, and 1 abstention to support this resolution. And we ask the RTM, please do the same. It has been over 2 years, and people are waiting for us to show that government can actually get something done for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Very thorough. Town officials. Are there any other committees that want to report? I misstepped there. No. Town officials? Members of the RTM? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm Jay Hardison, District 4. I don't think anybody's arguing with what was in Exhibit C when we agreed to this purchase, but when this body voted on this purchase, this is one of the few things I've voted for, a big expenditure in my entire tenure on this. And the only reason was it was a good deal for the town. And there weren't any plans at the time we voted to buy this. Those have all come subsequent to the purchase. So I don't think the town's expecting any big thing. Joanne made the point, wherever she is, that everybody wants to use this. They're expecting to do something with it. I think a parkland type use makes sense to do that. I think everybody's gotten these emails from all the adjoining neighbors and residents in town. The issue is not, well, it is that they're opposed to what's planned for it. It's also that they really had no say in this. This has happened. We had a vote about the shuffle. 2/3 were against it. That got pushed through anyway. The short lane purchase, I remember distinctly, for those that have been on this body long enough, it was proposed by the first selectman that we could build a shack and maybe rent kayaks and paddle boards and build some nature trails. But as soon as we got possession of the property, we came out with these elaborate plans for an amphitheater, town pool, etc. This is happening at Pear Tree now. There is no neighbor on that committee. The editorial that came out, I'm just going to speculate on my own that was completely planned and orchestrated. The email that came out this morning to everyone with the editorial, I sent Donna an email and asked from whence this came or from whom it came. And I don't want to get anything wrong here, so to quote her, Jamie Stevenson provided the timeline. But the real thing is, back to Joanne's point, that this is what the town wants. We had a town survey. 2,500 people participated. That is a huge sampling that is very statistically significant. So I don't get anything wrong here with the numbers. Developing Oxbridge came in at number 11 with only 40% for. So the other 60% were indifferent or opposed. Number 13 was add athletic fields to anywhere in town. So I don't understand. The neighbors had no say in this, and yet we have a town survey that says the majority of people don't want athletic fields. I don't understand why this is being pushed through against everyone's objection. So in closing, I kind of have a compromise, and they say in business negotiations, the best negotiated deals are those where neither side is happy. So my proposal would be to vote no on this amendment or point. Appoint a committee consisting of 50% of the neighbors. And the neighbors might not like this, but I'm opposed to a parkland-only use as well. That's not why we bought it. My intention when we bought it, or my thought was that we're getting this for the town so that in 2042, whatever we may need, whatever we may want to do, that's what we can do with it. So I would propose a temporary parkland designation through 2042 with minimal use, open to the entire town, much more limited parking, and let the neighbors have a say in what ultimately goes there. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the RTM? Electors of the town? Yes, ma'am. If you'd
Laura
give me
Mosier.
your name and your address, that'd be great.
I'm Laura Mosier, District 5.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were.
It's okay.
I was asking for elector. I missed you when you're okay.
I
Sorry.
was a little confused about what's written in the resolution because it mentions that the comfort station is part of our resolution. And I believe Joanne has just said that there is no comfort station. So why is it written here? It says it's including but not limited to 2 parking areas, including drainage, as well as a walking path and a comfort station. So are we including a comfort station? So this is just a porta potty, but the shed isn't mentioned. Is that correct?
Kate? Our distinguished town administrator.
When we write bond resolutions, we tend to try and make them very comprehensive to encompass anything that we might wish to include. There are no plans for the comfort station. Should there be funds left over, and it's highly unlikely that there would be funds left over, it would allow us to put the monies from this bond proceeds towards the construction of a comfort station. But we have absolutely no plans to construct one at this time, and I don't believe that there would be sufficient funds in this authorization to allow us to do so. I would have no personal objection if you wanted to strike those 2 words out of the resolution.
Couldn't we make the funding request a little tighter so that we know exactly what it is that we're paying for?
If you wish to make an amendment to strike the words comfort station out, I have no objection.
But the cost doesn't get
There
decreased.
There is no cost. There is no estimate in that $609,000 that would cover the comfort station. It is not in there. That $609 is strictly for the parking areas and the walking path.
What about the shed?
In the shed, the shed, the fencing, the landscaping, but absolutely not a comfort station.
Thank you.
Then I think it should be removed from the resolution.
It's on the record as to what it is.
I make a motion.
Do you? Yeah, yeah, right. Did you make a motion, Miss?
Yes.
Oh, all right. Step forward so we can you're
I'd
moving.
like to make a motion to remove the words comfort station from the resolution.
Okay. Do we have a second? All right. On the amendment, any members of the RTM comment on that? Town officials? I think Kate talked about it anyway. Members of the public? Okay. Ready to vote? We're voting on the amendment. I heard what you said. I think where we have an amendment to an item that's on here that we should probably vote conventionally. Those in favor of the amendment? Yeah. The amendment is to delete the reference to the comfort station in the resolution. Is that correct? Okay? Okay, that's what it is. So those in favor, please rise.
Don't sit down yet, please. Don't sit down. Thank you. Thank you. This one. Yeah.
Results on the voting, 19-14, unanimous, 91 in favor. 19-13, also unanimous, 19 in favor. 91 in favor, I mean. Oh, noes, please. Opposed? And abstentions? Take a second to get that tallied, and then we can vote on the motion as amended. So can I go ahead and, it looked to me like it carried. Do you want me to go ahead and, okay. Okay, now we vote on the resolution as amended. Ready to vote? The amendment passed. Who? Oh, no, I asked. I'll ask again. Electors. Electors would like to speak. I see none. Oh, I take that back. There we are. Sir, you're next. Sir, you're next. This lady is coming. I saw her first.
Teresa Vogt, District 6. So having gotten all the emails, mostly from the neighbors, I decided to contact people in my district because I'm not a neighbor to Highland Farms, and I do want to use it.
Could you give me your name and address?
Oh, I'm sorry, Teresa Vogt. Oh, no, I'm District 6.
Oh, okay. Then tell me what district it is.
And it was a mixed bag of people on how I should vote, but we all want to use it. The question is, do we need 92 spaces? That's my only hesitation, is 92 spaces for that area. But yes, all for walking trails, all for someplace to go to the bathroom when you're there, for the storage shed. It's just the 92 spaces. I think we can have fewer spaces. So.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
David Martin, District 5. I've heard a lot of comments that the public and the neighbors haven't had an opportunity for input. But aside from the multiple Board of Selectmen meetings and planning and zoning meetings where the Highland Farm was a topic on the agenda for discussion in which the neighbors could participate, there was a subsequent meeting held on April 9th of 2018 at the Mather Center with town staff, at which the entire plan was presented and neighbors had the opportunity to review and comment. And in the P&Z meeting dated July 24th, 2018, there's an entire section in the notes that references, that said public comments received. And item 31 said that during the public hearing on June 19th and by email, the Planning and Zoning Commission heard from a number of Darien residents, and I won't read the remainder of it. But the bottom line is that Darien residents have had plenty of opportunity to know about the project, know the details of the project, and have input related to the project. Furthermore, the project has been designed by professional engineers. It's been fully vetted by all of the relevant bodies of the Darien government, including the Board of Selectmen, the Planning and Zoning Committee, the Finance and Budget Committee of the RTM, the Park and Rec Committee of the RTM, the Planning and Zoning Committee of the RTM, and all of those bodies have recommended moving forward with the proposed plan of development. Last but not least, as a member of the RTM and a member of F&B, when we voted to purchase this property, everyone expected that the property would be used for the least intensive, least invasive uses available to all 22,000 residents of the town. And this proposal is in keeping with that. Otherwise, the town will have spent $6.25 million to purchase the property, foregone $45,000 in annual taxes on said property, and paid an undisclosed, I don't know what the number is, I'm sure someone in the government knows, amount of funds to study and have plans prepared for the property. And all of those expenditures would solely benefit those residents, those few residents who live in the immediate vicinity of the property. In my opinion, that would be fiscally irresponsible, and I recommend that we move forward with this project as proposed.
Thank you. Other members of the RTM? David? Yeah.
Hi, David Bain, District 5. I think Joanne Hennessy made an important point when she gave the report of the PZ&H committee that there are no present plans to do future development on the property. So I was hoping maybe she could come up and recount to the RTM the representations she and her committee have received, that there will not be future improvements that are currently planned or foreseeable in the near future. I think everyone's concerned about piecemeal appropriations for a property like this, so I think it would comfort everyone to know that the $600,000 being proposed tonight is it. We're said and done with this property for the 10 to 20 years that she mentioned in her report.
Okay, that isn't quite what I said or quite what I meant. The $609,000 is all we're looking at tonight. And what is planned for this property is the only thing that is currently planned. Will we ever want a comfort station there? I don't know. The reason we're not doing it now is because there's a thought that maybe we don't need it, that given the use of the property, the seasonal porta potties will be all we'll need. Does that mean we're never, ever going to do anything else on the property ever? No, it doesn't, because one of the things we put in Exhibit C, for example, is irrigation, because one of the things that a lot of, when we were seeking input from various groups in the community, there was suggestion that, gee, we need more space for community gardens. So we wanted to make sure that if the town or groups wanted a community garden someday down the road, that we would have the ability to do that. In order to do that, we'd need to irrigate, and that would cost money. So I can't say that we're never going to spend money again, but this is going to be an evolving process. We can't say right now, okay, on this particular corner of the property, that's where the community garden's going to go. We don't know if there ever is going to be one or if there's going to be enough people who want it there. So I think it makes sense to let this evolve. Right now we're doing the most minimal thing we can. It is, I listened to Jay. I filled out that Parks and Rec survey, and I listed open space as number one, and this to me is open space. Open space doesn't have to mean unused space, like the field that is opposite Weburn that is land trust property. It's beautiful to look at, but you're not allowed to set foot on it. That's not what this open space, this is actively managed open space for passive recreation, but it still is open. So David, there may be things in the future that this body or, there'll be contingencies of groups in town that will bring something forward, maybe to the Board of Selectmen and say, gee, we'd really like this, what do you think? And if there's a groundswell and there's people who want to do it, then we may spend more money. But I don't know of anything right now, and I don't see the comfort station. There hasn't been a groundswell for it, and there hasn't been a pressing need for it. If the community's using it and saying, hey, we really need this, then we as representatives should listen to them. But right now, this is all that's planned. It's a minimal passive use of this property. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you, Joanne.
Yes, Clara.
Hi, I'm Clara Sartori, District 2. It seems that people are concerned about sort of a piecemeal improvements on the property. So could we have some sense that if that were to happen and someone were to propose additional, because it says including these things but not limited to these things, wouldn't you have to come back to the RTM to ask for the money for those things? So this isn't the RTM's last chance to pass judgment on what's going to be on the property. If there are needs for future developments there, the money will have to come from an RTM vote. So whoever wants those will have to come back to the RTM. Is that right?
Right. Yeah.
So, right.
Joanne said anything over $25,000. So, more? RTM? Yes.
Arpita Muchal, District 1.
If you step a little closer, it may work better.
Arpita Muchal, District 1. So I was not sure if I wanted to speak tonight because, as people have mentioned, there's a lot that has already been said on this topic. But in hearing to Joanne's response and Clara just saying something, it brings to my attention the fact that even on the paperwork, on one side we are saying comfort station, but then we are hearing we don't really have a need for comfort station, but then we are saying we need 92 parking spots. If we have 92 parking spots, we need a comfort station. That's my judgment on this, and what I am concerned about is one of the things that we said we would not do as a town was to do piecemeal projects that end up costing us more than what we started out as. And I do respect that this is just a $609,000 project, so not quite worthy of a committee. But if we keep adding it on, so we have $6,250,000 already spent, and then we've spent more money on this Highland Park. Once we approve the $609,000, we are now well over that $7 million mark. And then if somebody comes back to us for a $300,000 comfort station, because that's what is needed for the park, I just find that it'll be impossible at that point to go and say we won't be doing this. So why not study the whole thing, whether it's 60 parking spots that are needed, a $300,000 comfort station that's needed? Why don't we look at it together? I also heard a lot of people who spoke today and in the previous saying we don't know what the town will want. Well, then maybe we have not listened. Maybe we need to ask more what the town wants from the park, because after 2 years, if we don't know what the town is going to want in the next 5 years, maybe I'm missing something here. So can anybody who was on, who has mentioned that we don't know what the town will want in 5 years, if they want to come up and kind of explain to me why we don't know what we will need there in 5 years, I'd really appreciate that. Thank you.
What's on the table is $609,000, fairly carefully spelled out. And a body will be here the next time somebody is looking for funds for this. So I think the process works, and I think it would work in the future. Others from the RTM. Pardon me, this takes me a second because we've got a full boat tonight, so it takes me a minute to cover everybody. Public, anybody from the electors? Yes, yes, ma'am.
Jenny Schwartz, 8 Saddle Ridge Road. First off, I'd like to correct one comment that a gentleman said. The April 9th meeting where members of the public were invited to speak, they were invited by invitation only. There were only a few. I think it was you. There were only a few people invited. It wasn't a general public meeting. It was by invitation only. So that's one correction. And the P&Z hearing, the discussion was limited to a very narrow section of the code. So there was not, the Planning and Zoning Commission said they would not entertain policy. So
okay, those are passed. So now we've got $609,000 in this resolution.
Okay, so first I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to seriously consider this important town asset and the funding request at hand. I acknowledge that this is a difficult position, and I have confidence now that the matter has the full attention of the RTM, that you will give it the best decision you can with the information that you have. The RTM serves a unique role in our town government. You communicate between the town boards and what the leadership is doing and how that impacts each of your districts and your committees. You're the bridge between the town boards and the public, and you get to decide how and when to allocate taxpayer dollars. Your charge is not narrow. Your vote does influence policy, and it matters. I think it's presumptuous to assume that this is a done deal, because I think that undermines your authority. Last Tuesday, in response to the May 13th vote to postpone, I had several people on the RTM say that they needed to hear more from the public. So I put together with my friends from Highland Farm a petition on change.org, and in 4 days we got 100 Darien residents to sign it to urge the RTM to vote no for a variety of reasons, and I believe all of you have a copy of the petition. I don't know how many emails you've all gotten from the public, whether it's on the $63 million Oxford School or the plastic bag ordinance, but my understanding that this Highland Farm item created an avalanche. This should tell you something. There are several reasons to vote no. There are a lot of questions outstanding, but this is all part of the public process that is ongoing until community buy-in and support is evident. We're still early. You lose nothing by saying no. There is public access now. While in some people's mind this was supposed to be the final forum to discuss this, I say it's just the beginning. Saying no allows the town to appoint a committee, incorporate the town study, conduct community outreach, vet options, determine best use, and formulate a capital spending plan. That's when we should come back to the RTM, when it's ready. Thank you for your time, and again, I really appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, I'm Heather Drugi, 11 Oxridge Lane. I think this town needs a tree warden. Just when you start to do these projects, we need to realize that we should be very, very, very concerned about losing our trees.
Miss.
So when you do
Miss,
these,
I have to thank you for that, but that's not on topic. If you could address the 609,000 and address
right. But what I'm saying is, you don't want to go down the road that New Canaan did with Irwin Park, where trees were destroyed and they ended up spending much more money on drainage and stuff.
I thank you for that.
I appreciate it. No, that's all I wanted to say.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Other town electors on the topic? Thank you. So, looks like we are ready to vote. We are voting on the item as amended, where we remove the comfort station. All those in favor, please rise. Voting on the 19.9B amendment, 75 in favor, 12 opposed, 1 abstention. Opposed, please. Jack, are you ready for the abstentions, please? Okay. The next item is 19.9, 1915. And before we get into that, I want to point out why this item is on there. It's so that we can get a grant from the state. We have to take action on this prior to June 30 in order to qualify for the grant. We thought that the 63 million item here was the last step in the process, but I found out this afternoon that it's not. There are 3 additional things that the RTM has to do. Approve the establishment of the building committee, authorize the preparation of schematic drawings, and authorize the Board of Ed to apply for the state grant. That all has to be done by the RTM. So what we want to do tonight is add an item to the agenda to include these items so that when we vote on this, we vote for all the pieces, the 63 million plus the 3 different administrative acts which have to take place. Otherwise, we wind up having to have a special meeting later on within about 6 or 7 days to take care of these administrative pieces. So rather than do that, add an item to the agenda with your approval. So I'll ask Jack, since he's the lead on this, to give us a motion for an addition to the agenda.
I'm Jack Davis. I'm asking for a motion to add the authorization of the Oxridge Elementary School Building Committee resolution to the agenda. Do I have a second? Back to you for having a vote on it, then I can go back to the resolution.
We don't, obviously, we've not had a meeting on these administrative items, so there's no committee reports as such. So, yes, exactly. So the next thing would be just, if there's anybody who has any thought about this, particularly any of the committees, I wouldn't think so, they haven't met on it. Any town officials want to discuss it? Or we can
vote to amend and then we can discuss.
All right, I will, what I will do is then call for those in favor to please rise to add this item to the agenda. Oh, all right.
Everybody who's standing, say aye.
Aye. Aye, beautiful. Any opposed can say no. It turns out we could do this with a voice vote. My apologies for getting you up and down here. Great, okay. So
I'm going to move it
now we will have Jack Davis lead off.
That was a little exercise so everybody could get ready for Golden State.
Just make sure you're awake.
I'm Jack Davis. I move resolution authorization of the Oxridge Elementary School Building Committee. Is there a second? Usually, I'm going to ask by voice vote. Usually, we'd waive the reading of the resolution. I want to make sure that everyone has heard it. So if it's okay to waive it, say aye. Aye. That's even better.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. We found out today that this was a procedural issue that is required by the state. It's sort of like dotting an I and proceeding. It has not been reviewed by any committee. I don't know what any committee would do. I mean, we could do FBI searches on the people who are on these building committee, but I don't think that would accomplish much. So we've all read the resolution. It allows us to establish the committee, it establishes the design drawings, and it allows the committee to apply for a state grant, which we'll address in the next issue. That's basically what this is. And if there's any questions, we can do our best to answer this.
Questions? Ready to vote to add to allow us to continue? Those in favor? I can't use acclamation now, right? No, you have to rise for this one. Those in favor? They're not 60 million. This is just the administrative things.
Jack, put the mic.
We just did that.
I've been asked to clarify exactly what's been going on from the district. There are 12 items here, but essentially it's doing three basic things, and Kate, you can correct me if I'm wrong. It's establishing the building committee and authorizing it. It's allowing them to do schematic drawings for the new school and all the other necessary aspects for designing the school, and it's authorizing them to apply for a state grant from the building committee. So that needs to be done. It's a state technicality, but that's the essential of these 12 items. So that's what we're voting on, to allow those things to occur. Is that a fair statement? Thank you, Kate.
So you're replacing the existing resolution with the new one?
No, that's the first one.
We're-
So we can do 15, 19, 15.
This is
Have that authorized.
this is 1918. This resolution that we're looking at now we'll call 1918. This sheet of paper here that takes care of all the administrative things that we have to approve in addition to the 63 million. If you pass the 63 million without passing these administrative pieces, you don't get the grant. Okay? Okay, now, where are we?
I guess I should have read.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Go to the mic.
All right, now,
Go to the mic. Can't hear the question.
Okay, John, do you mind going?
Matt, did you just put down 1918?
Yes, 1918.
1918, it's like World War I.
I know.
John Bolton, District 5, former Board of Ed Chair. This is word for word. I believe, Duke, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think this is word for word what you guys passed last year to request to the Selectmen form a building committee for the Oxford School. So this is really a technicality to begin the process to, the timing stinks because of the state and the fact that we're trying, or the building committee is trying to get some money from the state. That's what this is all about.
thanks, John. Okay, now where are we? Still, we're going to go back to we're ready to vote. Those in favor, please rise.
Vote for what?
This is item 1918. Those opposed, please. And abstentions, please. Somebody's adjusting. Is this sound better now? Kind of weird. Great. I'm sorry for the confusion here tonight, but if we didn't do this, we'd wind up having a special meeting in about 7 days to do it. So we're sort of putting up with a little discombobulation tonight to avoid doing a special meeting about 7 days from now. We bring all 100 of you back in here. So, Thank you.
Let's move this on.
Okay, so the next, so we are now on to item 19-15, which is the $63 million for Oxridge Elementary School. And starting off, Jack Davis, Chair of Finance and Budget.
Okay, back on course. I'm Jack Davis, District 3 Chairman of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. I move RTM Resolution 19-15, consideration and action on amending the Resolution 1912 appropriating $3 million for the planning, design, and construction of a new Oxridge Elementary School and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the amount of $3 million to meet said appropriation, to increase the scope of the project and the appropriation and bond authorization by $60 million to $63 million. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. If there are no objections, I propose to waive the reading of the resolution. The F&B Committee and the Education Committee participated in the June 3rd Board of Selectmen meeting. Thank you, Jamie, for allowing our participation. As you know, the town has had to modify its building committee financial process to comply with state requirements. Thus, we have an educated guest tonight with the building committee commitment to return to the RTM with a building budget consistent with the Public Works Garage during the next legislative year. By authorizing this amount, the town will meet the June 30th deadline to have the Oxridge Elementary School project reviewed by the state. And by the way, no school can build without such a review, regardless if a town is or is not looking for a grant. By doing this and not missing the June 30th date, because if it was missed, it would delay the construction of the school by 1 full year. In addition, the town will be eligible for an anticipated school construction reimbursement rate, try saying that fast, of 10.71% of the state-adjusted costs and possibly another 5% for related EOP state adjustment construction costs, generating a state grant possibly between $4 to $5 million for our taxpayers. And by all indications, the school construction grant monies will be lower for towns like Darien in this new state fiscal 20 budget. At a high level, the project assumes 100,000 square feet complying with state requirements, which are typically referred to as the educational requirements. For class size, an example is 900 square foot per classroom, which is bigger than most of our classrooms in the existing facility, and state-required open space. It allows for growth in the student population based upon the 2018 Board of Ed consultant enrollment calculations for the next 8 years. It consolidates ELP into a single facility with 10 ELP classes and 150 total students. This will allow for consistent or better services and potentially allow for future cost savings. It includes soft costs for furniture and technology, as well as the demolition of the existing school. These costs were enumerated in the estimates provided to the building committee by the architect and construction manager, both well experienced in Connecticut school construction. The larger part of my presentation is on what the costs are associated with the bonding. With respect to the authorization of bonding, bonds will not be issued until funds are used or needed. If the project is less than $63 million, bonds will not be issued for that difference. To provide the cost of bonds has quite a few caveats. Here are the assumptions to quantify the estimated costs of bonding. Potential financing schedule assumes a $5 million state grant, which is a pure estimate. But that is not that the costs go to 68, it's that the 63 goes down to 58 million. It assumes debt structure defers principal for 3 years on each issue, that's the maximum allowed, assumes debt payments of interest only for those first 3 years, and then level debt service. The Board of Finance, as you know, will reevaluate each tranche as it goes by, and it assumes a total term of 23 years, with each of the issues being 20 years, but the total expansion from when it's issued will cover that period of time. The financing as it is proposed for this calculation is $3 million February 2020 for design and planning. This body approved that appropriation in our May budget meeting. $24 million in February 2021 for building costs. Another $24 million in February 2022, again for building costs. And $7 million in February 2023 for remaining building costs, demolition of the older facility, and reestablishing the grounds of the older facility so it can be used. With this model, the aggregate, with these assumptions, average annual debt service for Ox Ridge is $3.4 million. Year one, the cost is approximately $84,000 interest only. Years 6 through 20, approximately $4.25 million. And then it decreases in what is effective years 21 through 23 as the initial bonds issued have been already repaid. Remember, we're doing 4 tranches, so some of those tranches will be paid off by that time. With this model, our aggregate debt service remains less than the fiscal 20, $10.7 million for the entire life of the issuance. It is also worthwhile to discuss that debt service is managed using 3 different models. Total aggregate dollars, the amount of annual debt that we see in our budget. Percentage of debt repayment to total expenditures. For fiscal year 20, total debt percentage approximates 7.2%. And lastly, percentage of debt to total net budget. That was the amount requested for taxes, which is approximately 7.7%. With the current estimates for the Ox Ridge appropriation and bonding, the decline of current issued and outstanding payments that it's currently going on, we discussed how we're currently at 60 and will be down about 24 by 2024. We can expect annual increases in the budgets, but the percentage of that we just mentioned, those 7%, will decrease as a percentage of our budget, which gives more for the operating flexibility. The other way to look at this is as a percentage of debt to the town's total adjusted grand list. Credit agencies typically like municipalities to be at 2% or less. The current outstanding debt for fiscal year 19 is about 70 basis points of our town's adjusted grand list. Assuming no increase in the grand list over the next 5 years, which we know there's 3 major projects that should be coming online in that time, the debt at 2024 ratio to our existing grand list would be about 90 basis points, and by 2025, the year later, it would be about 85 basis points and significantly decrease over the next several years. That's less than 1%, and it's well below the credit agency metrics. And again, that assumes no increase in our grand list over that period of time. All of the above indices indicate the town is well positioned to financially absorb this appropriation and bonding with minimal impact to our taxpayers. The committee discussed the Ox Ridge project in detail at its April 29th meeting and again at its June 3rd meeting, where 10 of 15 members were present. The committee reviewed all of the factors, how the estimate would be or was derived, the building committee presentation, which we're going to see later, and the amount requested for this appropriation and the bonding for said appropriation, and voted unanimously in favor of this resolution and strongly recommends the full RTM does the same. Thank you.
Speaking for the Education Committee, Clara Sartori, the chair.
Hi, I'm Clara Sartori, Chair of the RTM Education Committee. Thanks to Jack for introducing the resolution. The Education Committee met on Monday, June 3rd, with 12 of 15 members present and voted unanimously for the appropriation described above. Prior to the committee meeting that evening, a majority of the members of the Education Committee attended the Board of Selectmen meeting where Kip Coons and David Deneen, co-chairs of the Oxridge Building Committee, led an informational presentation on the conceptual plans for a new Oxridge school. Several members of the Oxridge Building Committee, including Mr. Deneen, later attended the Education Committee meeting to review the project and answer questions. The reason, as Jack Davis described, the reason the RTM is being asked to act on this resolution now is that in order to be considered for state funding, an appropriation authorization for the full project estimate must be filed by June 30th. The application process for state grants requires that the RTM come to them during the conceptual phase before the project's final design is completed and before the exact cost from subcontractors are known. The following points were made in response to the committee's questions. The requested $63 million is an educated guess. It's based on the inputs of experts in the school construction field. The state requires that the application for a construction grant include an appropriation for the full amount of the project. Applications for state grants are submitted to the Office of School Construction Grants and Review. The deadline is June 30th to be considered for the next fiscal year. Present reimbursement rates are estimated to be 10.71% of what is considered reimbursable costs. Possibly there will be some extra funds for ELP that will be provided. Funding rates could decrease in the future due to the state's debt diet. That's why the deadline is so important. The ed specs were completed with the input of teachers, administrators, and specialists in elementary education and the ELP who worked within the parameters of state guidelines for square footage, enrollment requirements, housing developments. Experts in school design, grant application, enrollment projections have been engaged in the planning so far. The current Oxridge building is sited on the best location. The space on the site is tight. The new school will allow for construction of ELP into one space, resulting in an improved program and improved efficiencies. The construction should last 30 to 37 months, with a target opening date of August 2022. If a new school is not built, approximately $5 million a year would need to be spent on the upkeep. The Education Committee urges the RTM to vote in favor of this resolution. Thank you.
Thanks, Clara. Other committees? Town officials? Kip? You Going to present? Here's your chance. Kip Coons is co-chair of the building committee.
Test.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kip Coons. I'm co-chair of the building committee. Tonight you'll hear from me. Can't hear?
Batteries running out.
You'll hear from me. You'll hear from Duke Deneen, who's co-chair of the building committee. And you'll hear from Diane Boston, another member of the committee who happens to be an architect. I'll wait for the first slide to show up. Slideshow. Okay. So, what's our agenda here tonight? Our agenda is really to answer 5 questions. If we could have the next slide. Terrific. Those 5 questions are, what is the background on the Ox School project? Who are the members of the Ox Ridge Building Committee and what have we done so far? Why are we asking for this appropriation now? What is the basis for the appropriation amount? And finally, what is the potential amount of state construction grant to partially offset and fund the project? So those are the 5 questions we're going to address in this presentation. Some background. In September of 2016, the Board of Education retained a firm, KG&D, to study and create a master plan by examining the needs of the entire district. The study results identified the priorities to focus on: location of the early learning program. It's been spread around a number of schools. Number 2, the Ox Ridge Elementary School itself. And third, elimination of the portable classrooms throughout the district. The Ox Ridge is the newest of the old elementary schools. It was constructed in 1966. It was added onto in 1996. The master plan identified projects costing over $5 million to simply keep the 50-year-old building running without addressing any space or educational needs. KG&D also opined that due to the age and quality of the original building, it was more cost-effective to replace rather than renovate. I emphasize the quality. A California-style school in New England. The factors included in this $5 million estimate were code upgrades, more efficient energy systems, security, accessibility, the end life of the existing mechanical systems, HVAC improvements, and hazardous material abatement. Additional considerations not factored into the $5 million were the modernization of the instructional space and consolidation of the early learning programs, allowing for better use of the resources. And Diane will show you about the trend of educational space over the past 40 years. So in the spring of 2018, the Board of Education, they discussed the Ox Ridge facilities, held a public hearing, followed by a Board of Education approval to move forward on replacing the school. In the fall of last year, they developed and approved educational specifications, followed by a request to the First Selectman to form an Ox Ridge Building Committee. The Board of Selectmen adopted a charge of responsibilities, which you basically approved tonight, for the committee, interviewed candidates, and sat a committee by early February of this year. The committee has toured both the Ox Ridge School and the Tokenie School for background and comparison purposes. So the committee consists of the following individuals. You have myself, representing the Board of Selectmen. I was on the Garage Building Committee. You have Duke, who's co-chair of the Board of Education, co-chair of our committee and vice chair of the Board of Education. He was also on the Facilities Committee of the Board of Education. Michael Alfieri is our secretary. Michael is a 30-year neighbor of Oxford School. He's the house that has the ponies. You'll know it well. He was 25 years in Accenture Consulting and now has his own construction business in town. Interesting combination. Both his children and grandchildren attended Oxridge. Diane Boston. Diane Boston is a licensed architect in both Connecticut and in New York. She is working on her Master's of Environmental Management at Yale right now, and she was the person that spearheaded our looking for and reviewing and choosing the architect that we've chosen. Randy Giraldo. Randy Giraldo, also his children go to Oxridge. He started out in the building and construction background, but he realized there was more money made to be managing real estate. So now he heads up a $30 billion portfolio for TIAA-CREF. Katie Lubin. Katie is on the board of the vice chair of the PTO at Oxridge, is heavily involved with school matters, and was very helpful in putting this presentation together, I might add. Rusty Schreiner is not here tonight. Rusty attended the 75th anniversary of D-Day in Normandy, and I envy him. Rusty chaired the middle school building committee, which he brought in on time and under budget. He also has managed a business which does advising consent on management and construction of actually ice rinks throughout the country. And John Zagrodsky, he's chairman of the Board of Finance, and I think you know John well. He was also on the Garage Building Committee, and John said, we're never going to do another bad school again. This committee also takes advantage of our ex officio members, and we do it very seriously because we invite them to all of our executive committee meetings. We invite them to help us whatever we need it, and they do provide the advice. So here's the list of the people, both Jamie Stevenson, Kate Bush, and Jennifer Chernesky from the town. The superintendent, Dr. Elliot Landon, Tara Ockman, chair of the Board of Education, Mike Lynch, director of facilities, a key person for our project, Mike Feeney, director of finance, and obviously Luke Forshaw, the principal of Oxford School. So we take advantage of all these people's expertise and advice. Our preliminary considerations as we reviewed the ed specs with Dr. Landon, especially those for the early learning program. We went through the town permitting process with Jeremy Ginsburg. We investigated the importance of flexibility and expandability in school design. This was critically important in the middle school, where they built the common spaces larger than the projected enrollment would be. Thank God they did, because the school enrollment is much bigger today than when they did their own projections back then. We plan to do the same here. And we also contracted for various site survey updates, traffic studies, hazardous material surveys, and geotechnical testing. Diane, this is your turn.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've done with regard to an architect on this Oxridge committee. And so the process that we've been through so far, the committee issued an RFP to which 11 architect and design firms responded. The building committee interviewed 6 firms. They chose 3 as finalists and assigned them a project to analyze the Oxridge site and develop preliminary conceptual designs. Sorry. Okay. Let's see. Prior to the the architecture presentations, the committee members toured one elementary school built by each of the 3 finalists, which was very informative, and we all learned quite a bit from that. And then on May 9th, the finalists made presentations of conceptual designs, and they put together very rough cost estimates and timelines, which were included with each of the designs. The goals there really were to analyze the site and to begin to address all the concerns on the site and help us understand what the challenges would be with our design here. On May 10th, the committee unanimously selected SLAM Collaborative to serve as the architect for the Oxford Elementary School. This illustration shows the existing elementary school. You can see, as Kip mentioned, the two 1966 buildings on the right, next to which is the 1996 addition. This drawing, wanted to show you all, some of you may not be all that familiar with the elementary school, to show you the site parameters and how the school really does fill up the existing site. This serves to show the neighborhood surrounding the school, as well as parking and fields that exist. From these architecture interviews, these are some of the site challenges that we learned about. There's a steep slope on the site that is demonstrated by this drawing one of the architects put together. It shows a difference of, I think, about 60 feet in elevation from one side of the site to the other. Likewise, there are also some perimeter wetland areas that need to be addressed. The site, as shown from the previous drawing, you could see the residential neighbors surround the school property, and that causes, the school design needs to give attention to the scale, the views, and screening. There's limited site access to the property, and you'll see in the next drawing there's a very small access area which needs to be really thought through as far as construction vehicles and vehicles coming to the school for the school day. That's going to be a really challenging area to get the operations in and out. And then if you could go back to the previous slide. Let's see, also the existing single school story location occupies the most desirable site area on the site. We discovered that. So that's something we need to give a lot of consideration to, so that we develop a school design that's good, not just for the immediate construction purposes, to make it easier to build, but something that's right for the long term on that property. We also found that the new school requires more square footage than the existing, which I think we probably realized, due to the educational specs based on the enrollment projections and consolidation of the early learning program. The new school siting, just generally, the new school siting should maximize the school safety, optimize vehicular and pedestrian traffic, provide space for fields, playgrounds, and make possible future expansion, just as Kip discussed with the middle school, how successful we were there. And then finally, this drawing here is an existing site analysis where SLAM just demonstrated some knowledge and an understanding and sensitivity to what's going on the site. Areas of steep slope, areas of wetland, where the existing school is, where the neighbors are located and have close views into the site. So really just beginning to understand all the challenges of the site. And then this illustration here was something also provided to us by SLAM, and it starts to kind of tell us how the classrooms have changed over time. The two illustrations show the same footprint for a school in 1966 and one in 1996. 1966, this was made up primarily of classrooms, and you can see 500 students might have been housed in taught in a school of that layout. Over time, we have found the need for other spaces in the school. So that same space in 1996 would provide space for 250 students, which the needs that are added on there include an expanded media center, art rooms, music rooms, special education, all the spaces that is really core to our learning today. And that's just to demonstrate how the 1966 school that Oxford was built for really is no longer accommodates the needs that we have. And then the next illustration is one more from SLAM, which just shows the growing classroom needs over time. 1960s, the learning was more instructor-directed learning. Over time, the learning has shifted to more collaborative and more active learning, which requires a different layout of seating and different space and just more square footage per student.
Thank you, Diana. So after getting the architect on board, we then looked for the construction manager. We first figured out what kind of role we wanted the construction manager to play, and so we finally chose the style which is called construction manager at risk. This particular approach allows us to eventually get to, after all the subcontractor bids are done, you have a contract which is called a guaranteed maximum price contract, which is the way the town garage was built very successfully. So we issued RFQs, and we had 8 firms that responded. We cut it down to 3 to interview. We interviewed all 3 finalists, requested and evaluated their RFPs, conducted reference checks, et cetera, and we finally chose the joint venture of O&G Industries and AP Construction on May 17th. This particular joint venture constructed the middle school. They also constructed the Darien High School, the Darien Library, and APC was the construction manager on the town garage. So they have a lot of experience in our town, but they have a lot of experience around the state. Now we get to the heart of the whole discussion. A normal project of this size starts out with a town-sponsored project. It begins with a charge to and a creation of a building committee, who in turn hire an architect and a construction manager, and various consulting firms to help them. We've done all that. After those engagements are done, it now proceeds into the following phases. Initial appropriation to cover pre-construction fees, which was the $3 million you did in May. Conceptual drawings, schematic designs, design development, and finally construction drawings. These are the very detailed items from which subcontractors bid. We have the bidding process and the finalization of the construction contract. All of that is called the pre-construction phase. Then we go right into the construction phase, which is basically doing the building, the site work, the demolition, the issuing of a CO finally, and moving in and a punch list and a closeout. That's how all projects should work. And I should say that before the construction begins, there's an appropriation authorization and bonding approval, because now we know all of our costs. That's how we did the garage. Can't do that here. Why? Well, we have the state. The state process is a paradox. In order to qualify, I'm sure you're not familiar with that, right? In order to qualify for reimbursement from the state of Connecticut for any portion of the cost of building or renovation, this logical phasing is all revised. The state's approach is that an application need only have ed specs for the planned construction, an updated enrollment projection going out 8 years, a qualified building committee, and appropriation to fund the project. That's what we're here for tonight. The paradox is the appropriation authorization must be for the full amount of the project, a project that has yet to be designed, much less cost quantified, and drawings which are not yet done. Therefore, the full amount must be based solely upon preliminary estimates, and that's why we're here tonight. With that, I'm going to have Duke explain to you the state process. Best of luck.
You got the exciting part, huh, Duke?
Thanks, Kip. So the state process, which is why we're here. Some of this is going to be repetitive thanks to the great presentations before us and the presentation that Jack made. So applications for state grants must be submitted to the Office of School Construction Grants and Review by June 30th in order to be considered for the next fiscal year. A little bit of the process here. The applications approved by the state are placed on a recommended priority list that is sent to the governor by December 15th of 2019. It's voted upon as part of an educational bill in the spring of 2020 with a final grant commitment issued by early July 2020. Throughout this one-year process, the Oxridge Building Committee, along with the architect and the construction manager, will be meeting with the state and looking at each phase of the project pre-construction and continuing to work on the project. The committee members met with the state in early April and confirmed the potential availability of state funds for the next fiscal year, provided the application was submitted before June 30th of the deadline. If we do postpone it a year, there's no guarantee that the funds will be there at any amount, and it also leads to a year of the school not being built and also an escalation of construction costs. We went through a lot of the application requirements at the start of the meeting in terms of the resolutions, the qualified building committee, updated enrollment projections, detailed ed specs, and the appropriation that we're talking about right now. Currently, in meeting with the state, we met with the director, and he got out his spreadsheet and looked at the grant funding for all the districts throughout Connecticut. The approval, the rate based on a new school build is currently estimated at 10.71% of reimbursable costs, and as stated earlier, potential additional 5% of reimbursable costs specific to the needs of the early learning program. The state encouraged us to file the application by June 30th of this year, citing the likelihood of funding rates further decreasing in future years, as well as the possibility of very limited funding given the governor's emphasis on reduced state borrowings. The committee engaged Colliers International to assist in the grant application process and is working on the application before the deadline. We currently have a meeting set up June 19th to go back with everything that we've prepared so far and meet with our assigned architect and the director of the state state grants department. And then we have tentatively scheduled to submit the application with the Board of Ed on June 26th. A little bit about the details. The education specs, which were done by the Board of Ed, form the basis for the new school construction. Minimum space requirements per student are mandated by the state. These minimums vary by grade. Enrollment is defined by the state as the highest projected enrollment in the next 8 years. That determines the minimum education space requirements of the school. Updated enrollment projections for Oxridge, so a maximum of 428 students, K through 5, and 150 expected ELP students for a total student population of 578 students. With that, the mandated minimum size of the education space comes out to about 75,600 gross square feet. Common areas such as corridors, entryways, mechanical rooms, storage areas are not considered as educational space, but are required as part of any school. Our current Board of Ed specs come in at a little over 81,000 gross square feet, translating into a building of approximately 100,000 gross square feet. We're allowing for more classroom and common area space than the state standards, as well as to support the special needs program of the significantly expanded ELP program. Rough estimates of construction and soft costs were lifted from the presentations by the 3 architectural firms that were finalists. Obviously, these numbers are based upon very early concepts of school designs. The numbers ranged from $55 to $60 million before town costs of financing and specialized consulting. The appropriation request of $63 million includes these extra costs. The next slide shows some comparable costs from current school projects. The cost on those projects range anywhere from a low of 500 to a high of 620 square feet. Again, these are preliminary estimates of the gross square footage cost. Kind of to recap, the reimbursement rate for grant funding is based upon a possible 10.71% of eligible costs. The challenge we have as we go through the process of working with the architects and adhering to the state standards and looking at what our needs are, if the building does exceed the state standards, the reimbursement rate can be further reduced by a ratio of the state standards divided by the projected building size. So currently, we're at $75,600 from an ed spec. The overall school looks like it's coming in at 100,000 square feet. The adjustable reimbursement rate becomes 8.097. Again, these are estimates and just preliminary numbers. Our consultants advise us that normally 5% of costs are not eligible. Accordingly, a $59.8 million of eligible costs would yield about a $4.8 million grant funding. And additional funding might be available with the ELP consolidation in that building. We'll open questions. So we'll open up for questions, Seth?
Yeah. Members of the RTM? Questions? Okay. Electors of the town? I see none. Looks like you did a great job. Are we ready to vote? All those in favor, please rise. Results of the voting, 19-9 as amended. Highland Farm, 61 in favor, 21 no, 10 abstain. Results on 1918, adding the additional item to the RTM agenda was unanimous, 92 in favor.
The count for 1990. 61-21. 61-21. For Highland Farm.
Was 61 in favor, 21 no, 10 abstain. Did I get the noes? No. Noes, please. Abstentions, please. All right. Next item is 19-6, consideration and action on a gift from the Darien Athletic Foundation up to $300,000 for the construction of cross-country running path over DHS and Diller properties. For Park and Recreation Committee, Adele Conniff.
Adele Conniff, District 3, RTM Parks and Recreation Committee Chairman. I'd like to move 19-16, consideration and action on a gift from the Darien Athletic Foundation of up to $300,000 for the construction of a cross-country running path over DHS and Diller properties. Do I have a second? Second. With no objection, I'd like to waive the reading of the resolution. The gift from the Darien Athletic Foundation will be construction of a cross-country running path primarily along the perimeter of Darien High School and the perimeter of the Diller property, which is adjacent. The town of Darien purchased the Diller property in 1988 as open space, and in 1997 the property became dedicated parkland. The path will be used by the Darien High School cross-country team for practice and for 1 to 2 competitions per year. The path will have a crushed stone surface 5 feet wide. The cross-country path on the 2 properties is approximately 1.15 miles. On the Diller property, there will also be constructed a plank boardwalk 2 feet wide and 420 feet in length over the wetlands that will create a walking loop on that property for community use. 6 parking spaces will be built along Nutmeg Lane for the community as well. Invasive plants will be removed from the Diller property, and 2 culverts will be installed for the crossing of intermittent watercourses. No trees will be removed from the Diller property, and only 1 will be removed from Darien High School. The Board of Education will be responsible for maintenance on the high school grounds. The path on the high school property will be subject to Board of Education authority and will be closed to the general public during school hours, including summer school. The whole of the path will be closed to the public when it's used by the cross-country team. The Parks and Recreation Department will be responsible for setting park rules on the Diller property and maintenance, which will include replenishing the crushed stone, trimming vegetation, and keeping the culverts clear. Combined maintenance is expected to average $4,000 to $5,000 per year. Over the years, the town has explored multiple uses for the Diller property, with none found to be feasible. Construction of the cross-country running path aligns with the Parks and Recreation Master Parks Plan recommendation of expanding walking pathways and trail connectivity to and within parks. This generous gift from the DAF is expected to be between $200,000 and $300,000. DAF has received approval from the appropriate town boards, except the Board of Education, which will vote shortly. The RTM Parks and Recreation Committee and Finance and Budget Committee met jointly on June 3rd. After a presentation by Jennifer Montanaro from DAF, the RTM Parks and Recreation Committee, with 9 of 15 members present, constituting a quorum, voted 8 in favor of acceptance of the gift and none opposed, with 1 abstention. The RTM acceptance of the DAF gift will enable the cross-country team to have home meets and will give them a place to practice off of our roads. We hope the RTM will support the acceptance of this generous gift from the Darien Athletics Foundation.
Thank you, Del. For Planning, Zoning, and Housing Committee, Joanne Hennessy. Chair.
Joanne Hennessy, Chair, Planning, Zoning, and Housing. Thanks again, Adele. Great summary. The Planning, Zoning, and Housing Committee met this evening with 14 members present, comprising a quorum. We talked briefly about this. We'd had our presentation from Jennifer Montanaro, who has done a wonderful job on coordinating this whole process, and she explained the whole procedures, what's going to happen, and we voted 13 in favor, none opposed, and no abstentions to accept this very generous gift, and we recommend that the RTM do the same.
For the Education Committee, Clara Sartori, Chair.
Hi, I'm Clara Sartori, District 2, Chair of the Education Committee. We met on Monday, June 3rd, to consider this resolution, and we had 12 of 15 members present. The committee voted unanimously to accept the gift with thanks to the Darien Athletic Foundation for its generosity. We also had Jennifer Montanaro, a representative of DAF, review the memo prepared by DAF, which described the background, location, and composition of the 1.15-mile running path, which is proposed for construction outside the perimeter of Darien High School and along the perimeter of the Diller property. The primary reasons the Education Committee voted to accept the gift are as follows. The running path to be used for the cross-country track will ensure a safe environment for more than 100 Darien cross-country student athletes who will no longer have to practice by running through the town streets where there are no sidewalks. The project has been approved by all relevant town boards such as P&Z, Traffic Authority, the Department of Public Works, and EPC. The gift will allow the community to use an otherwise unused area of the Diller property while preserving an area of open space. It was noted that the property is under the control of the Board of Education, that the DHS property is under the control of the Board of Education. The Diller property is controlled by Park and Rec. Responsibility for oversight and maintenance of the properties will be handled by these entities respectively. The cost is estimated to be $4,000 to $5,000 per year. The Education Committee asked about the proximity of the running path to homes in the area and any impact on the neighbors. We understand that the superintendent has reached out to the neighbors in an effort to resolve any concerns. Only 1 or 2 competitions will be held each year. Cross country is a quiet sport, not generating large cheering crowds. The Education Committee also noted that the Board of Education has not formally accepted the gift and is waiting to give final approval pending the approval of other town boards and the RTM. In response to an email, the Board of Ed provided the resolution of January 8, 2019, indicating the stipulations that the Darien High School portion of the path is closed during school hours, regular school days, and during the summer school session, and it is also closed to persons walking dogs. Thank you very much. We hope the RTM will support this.
Thank you, Clara. For the Finance and Budget Committee, Jack Davis, Chair.
Thank you, Seth. I'm Jack Davis, District 3 Chairman of the Finance and Budget Committee. The RTM Finance and Budget Committee had a joint meeting with the RTM Park and Rec. Jen Montanero presented for the DAF. The F&B Committee confirmed with the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen that the ongoing cost to maintain this gift was within the $4,000 to $5,000 range. Amounts for the Board of Selectmen were confirmed by Kate Bush and Pam Gary, and Tara Achman, Mike Feeney, and Mike Lynch confirmed the Board of Ed side. During our discussion on the 3rd, it was noted that there were 2 culverts that were going to be installed on the Diller property, and those costs weren't involved. Kate was great in doing some research on that, and she informed myself that the cost will be incremental to properly maintain these culverts with periodic cleaning, and it's going to be minimal at best. We'd like to thank the DAF for this wonderful addition to the town and the Board of Ed. And with 10 or 15 members present, the F&B Committee approved the gift unanimously and recommends the same to the full RTM. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Other committees? No? Town officials? Members of the RTM? Yes. Great, Nina.
Nina Miller, District 2.
There's a little wow factor going on here
sorry.
tonight.
Just concerned about the wetlands issue. Has there been a swap in town? Were able to use this wetland area to protect a different wetland area? There's culverts, I understand, and boardwalk going over some. Was the EPC consulted on this?
Yes, EPC was. I cannot speak to what it is. It's not my expertise at all. But EPC did. They did go before the EPC, and it was approved. And then, in fact, that's where we got the information from that the culverts were going to be put in.
Okay, great.
Jack said that the EPC was consulted.
Yeah. My other thought on the subject is that a good friend of mine, Pam Peters Fioreto, a Darien native and Darien school nurse, member of First Congregational Church, which is when I had my last conversation with her before she died. She was a great advocate of putting a private running path through the Diller property. And I'm wondering if there's already been a name claimed for the running path. If not, I would love to see it called the Pam Peters Fioreto running path. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Nina. Other questions, comments? Electors of the town? Ready to vote? All those in favor, please rise. Results of voting on 1915, 63 million for Ox Ridge, 89 in favor, 1 no, 2 abstentions. Opposed, please? Abstentions? Next item on the agenda is 1917, consideration and action on an amendment to the Darien Code of Ordinances regarding management of plastic and paper checkout bags in Darien. Speaking on behalf of Public Works and a lady who has put in a lot of hours on this and done a terrific job, Monica McNally, Chair of Public Works.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Monica McNally, District 2, Chair of Public Works Committee. I move Resolution 1917, resolution of the Representative Town Meeting of the Town of Darien approving an ordinance for the management of plastic and paper checkout bags. Do I have a second? Second. Without objection, I propose waiving the reading of the resolution. On October 15th of 2018, the Board of Selectmen moved the discussion and the possible creation of an ordinance banning plastic bags to the RTM, and the Rules Committee assigned it to 3 committees: Public Works, Public Health and Safety, and TGS&A. Research by these 3 committees began with a presentation by the Darien BYO group. Input was then collected from constituents, friends, and various commissions and organizations in Darien. Businesses were interviewed in person by RTM committee members and First Selectman Jamie Stevenson. Approximately 150 letters have been sent in to a designated RTM email box from individuals, businesses, and organizations regarding the ordinance. Media coverage has been continuous since November, with at least 21 articles published, including 1 letter by the editor. Feedback and research materials were kept up to date on the town website, along with information from some of the other 15 towns in Connecticut that have already implemented some sort of an ordinance on takeout plastic bags. The status of potential Connecticut state action on the plastic bag ban was also monitored. On February 6th and on March 27th, public hearings were held. Approximately 179 people in total attended and 51 people spoke. It was determined after the first hearing that there was a desire for an ordinance. A draft of the ordinance was presented at the second hearing, and feedback from that hearing helped shape the final copy of the ordinance that was distributed in the warning and which you have in front of you now. These actions were taken with the goal of creating an ordinance that is supported by our residents and by our business community. The Public Works Committee met on April 24th, with 10 of 12 members present, and voted 6 in favor and 4 opposed to the final version of the ordinance. The purpose of the ordinance is to encourage residents to bring their own bags when they go shopping, to end the use of single-use plastic bags, and to switch to paper bags that are 100% recyclable and made from at least 40% post-consumer recycled material. You can read the longer version of this in Section 1 of the resolution. Does everybody have a copy of this green sheet? If not, if you could talk to your district heads, they have some extra copies. I'm now going to give an overview of the ordinance from a timeline perspective, and after I will explain the outcome when the Connecticut state legislation is combined with the proposed Darien ordinance. I'll conclude with some answers to some frequently asked questions. Okay, so how does this work? The ordinance would begin to go into effect on January 20th, this coming January. At that time, any business as described in Section 2.1 over 10,000 square feet would no longer be able to provide a single-use plastic bag. Paper bags will be compliant, meaning 100% recyclable and made from at least 40% post-consumer recycled material. Businesses will charge and retain a 10-cent environmental fee per bag. Reusable bags that are sold will be compliant, which in this case means it will be 12 mil in thickness or more. On January 1st of 2021, the following year, all businesses, 10,000 square feet more or less, all businesses, regardless of size, will no longer distribute single-use plastic bags. All paper bags will be compliant, and all reusable bags will be compliant. Remember that 100% and 12 mil. All stores under 10,000 square feet are permanently exempt from charging the 10 cents environmental fee. Last Monday, June 3rd, the Connecticut legislation passed a plastic bag ordinance for the state. You can see, please refer to the 3-page handout, the green handout. This is really important, that you received. It is the entire bill that was passed by the House and Senate and is currently awaiting the governor's signature. This bill, on the green sheet, requires retailers to charge a 10-cent tax on any single-use plastic bag under 4 mil. This will begin this August 1st. This tax will be collected by the state and retained by the state. All single-use plastic bags, according to the state law, will be banned beginning July 1st of 2021. As you can see in the final paragraph of the state bill, there is no prohibition on municipalities from enacting or enforcing a more restrictive regulation. And there is no prohibition on municipalities requiring a store to charge a 10-cent or whatever fee they determine for paper bags. What does it look like? Okay, so what does it look like for Darien residents and businesses when these two acts are combined? Beginning August 1st, this coming August, state law will require when you go to the store, you pay a 10-cent tax on any plastic bag. On January 1st of 2020, this coming January, the Darien ordinance will require stores over 10,000 square feet to no longer provide single-use plastic bags and to charge 10 cents for the compliant paper bags. Beginning January 1st of 2021, no Darien store, regardless of size, will provide single-use plastic bags, and all stores will offer only compliant, reusable, and compliant paper bags. The stores over 10,000 square feet will continue to charge 10 cents. Now, I'd like to answer some questions that we've been asked, the committee's been asked repeatedly. The number one most popular, is the 10-cent fee legal? Yes. Section D addresses potential actions by municipalities. It specifically enables towns to enact their own ordinance, provided that it is as or more restrictive than the state's. It also enables towns to enact an ordinance requiring a paper bag fee. Who's going to enforce this? The ordinance requires the Board of Selectmen to appoint an environmental officer. Why charge a fee at all? The state ban on plastic bags will leave shoppers with 3 choices. When you go into the store, you can buy a reusable bag, you can bring your own bag, or you can take a free paper bag. The 10-cent charge on the paper bag, which the store will retain, will help people to remember to bring their own bag. It will also help stores to defray the increase in their costs. Plastic bags cost about 1.5 cents, and paper bags cost about 10 cents to 20 cents. With the state bill and no Darien ordinance implemented, stores will see a significant increase in their checkout costs. They won't be able to offer you a plastic, and so they will pay the higher charge on the paper that they're giving you. And if you don't pay the 10 cents, that's all on them. Okay, why don't all stores have to charge the environmental fee? One of the main takeaways from the second public hearing was that the 38 stores that are under 10,000 square feet, that's about 86% of our retail stores, these stores play a very small part in the distribution of single-use plastic bags, and they were not in favor of the mandatory fee. The overall support from the business community and the Chamber of Commerce for the ordinance was achieved after removing this additional regulation. Why did your committee vote the way they did? One of the major concerns of the 4 members of the Public Works Committee that voted against the ordinance was the question of legality on that 10-cent environmental fee. It should be noted that this vote was taken prior to the state's action last week. Accordingly, we were not able to conclusively answer that question at the time we voted. Why should we pass an ordinance when the state has one? Very good reasons. Good question. The Darien ordinance bans single-use plastic bags sooner. It will result in using more environmentally friendly paper bags, and it will help accomplish the main goal of encouraging people to bring their own bags when they go shopping. Therefore, a majority of the Public Works Committee strongly recommends the passage of 19-17 this evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Monica. That's great. Now, Frank Kemp from TGS&A.
Good evening. My name is Frank Kemp. I'm chair of the Town Government Structure and Administration Committee of the RTM. During 5 regular and special meetings and 2 public hearings, the TGS&A Committee worked in conjunction with the Public Works Committee and the Public Health and Safety Committee in research and drafting this ordinance, with special thanks going to the members of the committee and to Town Council Wayne Fox for the detailed work and the wordsmanship that are necessary part of any new ordinance. So a resounding thank you to the TGSA team who did this work. At a final special meeting of the committee held June 6th, with 7 of 12 members present, the committee considered and voted unanimously for recommending the approval of this matter by the RTM. It should be noted that this vote was taken 3 days after the Connecticut General Assembly amended and approved a resolution that initially charges for and then bans plastic single-use bags. At the same time, the Assembly indicated its approval of municipalities enacting ordinances that are as restrictive or more restrictive than the state regulations. And the state specifically stated that municipalities were not prohibited from enacting or enforcing ordinances concerning single-use paper checkout bags, in effect sanctioning municipalities' efforts to require stores to charge a fee for paper bags distributed to their customers. So with the state's actions in mind, the committee voted unanimously to recommend that the RTM approve item 19-17 on tonight's agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Great job by you and your committee. Now speaking for Public Health and Safety, Mac Patrick, the chair.
Good evening. I'm Mac Patrick, Chairman of District 5 and Chairman of Public Health and Safety. The Public Health and Safety Committee met tonight with 15 of 16 members present to discuss and vote on this resolution. Our committee was the first RTM committee to have a meeting with the Bring Your Own Darien group on October 22nd, 2018. At that time, our committee offered constructive advice to the group as they began their journey through the maze of the various Darien town government committees. Fast forward to today, our committee has met 8 times, including 2 public hearings and 6 committee meetings, as well as attendance at numerous TGSNA and Public Works meetings. At our February 25, 2019 meeting, our committee reviewed an early draft of the ordinance, agreeing that the ordinance should focus on banning the thin single-use plastic bags like those offered at Stop and Shop, Walgreens, and CVS. Discussions centered on the proposed mandatory 10-cent charge imposed by retailers for paper bags. At that meeting, Public Health and Safety members voted 8-6 to drop the 10-cent fee. At the March 18, 2019 Public Health and Safety meeting, the committee discussed the revised ordinance, which in its current form exempts businesses under 10,000 square feet from the mandatory 10-cent charge for paper bags. At that meeting, 6 voted for the ordinance, 1 voted against, and 2 abstained. At tonight's meeting, we discussed the recent State of Connecticut bag amendment included in the budget bill. Of note, plastic bags are allowed to be offered with a 10-cent tax going to the state. This begins on August 1st, 2019, and it ends on July 1st, 2021. After that, thin plastic bags are banned. The state is not banned nor required to charge for paper bags, but it doesn't prevent stores from charging for paper bags. It was noted the Darien ordinance is more restrictive, not less, which is clearly allowed by the state. The Public Health and Safety Committee voted 15-0 to support the Darien bag ordinance and ask that you do the same. Thank you.
Mac, thank you to you and your committee. These folks put in a lot of time on this because it was not an easy thing to deal with. Very complex, and the target kept moving. So congratulations to all of you. A nice job, great work. Other committees wish to report? Town officials? Members of the RTM? Electors of the town? Seeing none, ready to vote? All in favor, please rise. Here you go, dear.
I'm a yes. I'm a yes.
Voting on 19-16, Diller, the pathway, 91 in favor, no no's and no abstentions.
I'll take it up.
I'll go with you.
Okay.
I'm going to give Don a big hug or something.
Opposed, please. Abstentions? Great. Just wait till we get the tally here, and then I might entertain a motion to adjourn, but not yet.
Yes.
I just wanted to congratulate everybody here tonight. First of all, a tremendous turnout, great turnout tonight. Did a lot of work in a comparatively short period of time, but I think we covered the ground, and I think all of you seem to feel good about the votes that you made and the things that we were able to accomplish here tonight. So congratulations, nice job tonight.
Thank you, Seth.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn? I have a 10:30 over under on this.
Wait, I have to get the vote here. I have to announce the vote. We have this diligent team. We did. Oh. What was the, I handed it back. Oh, 91. Voting on the plastic bags, 1917. Yes, 86. No, 2. Abstentions, 2. Motion carries. I'll accept a motion to adjourn. All in favor, please rise.